Are freaking live. What is going on? Everybody's gonna start coming in here in a minute, I hope.
Nice. Well, that's always the hope.
Yeah, it's like, come on, where's everybody? Where is everybody?
Yeah. It's a busy night, man. Tuesday's a busy night sometimes streaming.
Yeah. Uh-oh, power shake. Is that a BVS logo on there?
It is a BVS. Oh, there we go. It is a BVS logo, of course.
Yes, you can see I got my BVS Batman statue right there. And Wonder Woman.
Actually, hold on.
My Superman one broke, so I got the bobblehead there in its place. Yeah. And they said it was too dark, but they love the Joker movie.
Yeah. I mean, they're different, right? Definitely different kinds of dark.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, this isn't.
There is John from John Talks. I've been watching it. I've been watching every video he's dropped the last week.
Well, that's because everyone's spreading like hot fire around the internet. Anything he puts Joker in the title. I say it dropped 30 minutes ago. Something 10,000 views.
And there is the man.
How's it going,
the
guys?
myth, the cyborg.
Hey, you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, man. We can hear you.
Cool.
What's going on,
John,
everybody?
How's it going? I'm Mark. I don't think we formally met.
Hey. No, good to meet you, Mark. And Uche, thank you so much, man. It's definitely an honor to.
Hey, man, it's an honor over here too.
So appreciate it, man. And Ryan, it's good to see you again too, as well.
I know. I probably won't be screaming at you about any Transformers today, but you never know where it may take us. But yeah, absolutely. Good to be on with you, man.
Yeah. All right. What's going on, everybody? We are live on my channel, The Observant Lineman Uche Nwaneri. I have some very special guests, as you can see in here. I've got Ryan Kennel from RK Outpost. I've got Mark the Cyborg and John from John Talks, all here to talk about the recent movie that is just creating a firestorm everywhere, Joker. Now, just to kind of kick things off, we all saw the movie, obviously, and we all have pretty good things to say about it. I thought it was, right there at masterpiece level as far as the work that was done on it. I know you guys all have your own opinions about it. So we'll just kind of start off, and I just want to hear what everybody kind of took away from the movie when they left it. So we can just, whoever wants to start it up, we can start there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead and start. So, I don't know if I'm like cynical or just tired of like today's media or whatever it may be, but when I go and see a movie, I am so rarely like really moved by anything in Hollywood these days or on TV or whatever. It's kind of like I'll watch it, I'll consume it. I'll be like, that was fun. That was, I enjoyed it. I like this. I like that. I didn't like this, but it was whatever. This movie. When I walked out of the theater, I almost ran to my car because I had planned on filming a reaction in my car. And I was like almost speechless. It was moving. It was scary. All the crap that the media is trying to push about this thing, glorifying violence. It's like 6 people died in the movie. Like, it doesn't glorify anything at all. It doesn't glorify the Joker. It is a warning about today's society and mental health and what can happen when a weak man is surrounded by people that let him down and that he has no one to rely on, and what can happen. And it was just so incredible to me. The score blew me away. There was this theme that they played throughout the movie that kind of grew in intensity. Yeah. Whenever he was getting closer to being the Joker. And then at the end, when Gotham is, are we talking spoilers?
Yeah, this is going to be a spoiler discussion, just in case you have not seen it. I mean, you can't really talk about this movie without going into spoilers. You're not going to do it any justice unless you talk about some of the specifics in the movie. So if you haven't seen this movie, might want to, check back or go and watch it and then come back into this. We may still be in here when you come back. But definitely going to be talking spoilers. So if you don't care, that's good. But if you do, suggest that you probably exit the building now. So go ahead. Keep going, Ryan.
So the last thing I was going to say, at the end, when Gotham is burning and the Joker's standing there, the theme that is playing, the whole movie just crescendos up to this point. And it's such a huge payoff. And when you see like what happens in the aftermath in the alley with Thomas and Martha Wayne, yeah, man, it was moving. I don't get moved by movies ever. And it was moving.
Absolutely. Just to kind of piggyback that myself, I agree with pretty much everything Ryan said. I found myself at a position where it was very hard to really describe how I felt about the movie. I mean, I knew that I saw something amazing, but I didn't really know how to describe it. It was just the feeling that I got about the movie was just, it was a very unique, unprecedented group of emotions that I got about the movie. It was terrifying, like you said. It was eerie. It was creepy. It was awesome. It was heartfelt. It was moving. And, again, like the soundtrack had a ton to do with that. The soundtrack had a lot to do with just building tension throughout the scenes. And one of the things that really amazed me about the movie itself was that Joaquin Phoenix was in every frame. He was in every frame. This was, and even in the best movies, there are moments where the main character is not in frame and is, it's kind of moved away from that character for a moment. But there was no moment in this movie where he was not in the scene. He was not in frame or being talking to someone or being talked to. And I mean, like you said, dude, after he went on the late night show and when the city just descended into chaos, and that theme when he got up off of the hood of the police car and tasted the blood in his mouth and then made the bloody smile. I mean, the way that the music hit at that moment, I mean, I got chills. People in the theater were actually like, yeah, they were screaming. I was like, I almost screamed. So I was like, go. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're too big. They'll think you're going to do something. But yes, man, I can't remember the last time. I mean, really, the last time that a movie ever had me feeling as if I wanted to get up and cheer. And y'all may not agree with this, but I felt that way. Not in this same way, but in general. Dark Knight and no, not even Dark Knight. Man of Steel. Man of Steel. I stood up and cheered in, but that was more because of the action in the movie kind of represented how Superman should act in a movie with the power that he had. But just a level of excitement that I didn't feel. And with the Joker, it was just this tense satisfaction that I was just, overcome with. And it was just utterly amazing for it to all come to a head at that point in the movie.
Yeah, one thing I will say, I don't know if I enjoyed this movie. I don't know if I enjoyed it, but it was incredible, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, fun wouldn't be the right word to describe.
Yeah. Well, when I said excitement, I was talking about Man of Steel.
Yeah.
That was the Man of Steel. With this, it was just tension. I was tense the entire movie. I noticed about 30, 40 minutes in, I was like, God dang, my heart's kind of beating like fast right now. I'm like kind of like tense in the chest. What's going on? But it was just that when you see a piece of art, when you see a work of art and you actually like are able to absorb everything that the art portrays for you, it's a special thing. And that's just something that I can't really say that I've ever experienced it to that degree with this kind of movie. And it was satisfying.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. It was satisfying. Like you said, Ryan, it's like, well, I couldn't say that I necessarily I enjoyed it on some level, but it wasn't like the way, like you said, Mark, it's not like, oh, it was a fun movie, but I literally came out of the theater and I was still processing everything. Like I didn't even really, I knew what I had seen was like something special, but I was still, there was so much to really think about and try to I guess dissect a little bit. And that was funny because I was with my girlfriend and she's like, I think she got worried because I was so like still in the movie. I was still thinking about it for a second. She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But it was I have to see it a second time because I just feel like there's just so much. I think there's a lot more there than I even gave it credit for at first. Because I think even within the first act, I thought, oh, this seems very basic, kind of a general. We've seen these type of cliches before, but once he begins to like become the Joker, I don't know. This movie was just, it was something else. It was a treat. Like it's been a while since I've actually, where I could say like this was a piece of art. Like it wasn't just a piece of entertainment, but I felt like this was a work of art.
Yeah, I think it's it would be hard to argue against it being a very well made and well crafted movie. Most of the arguments against it that I've heard seem to mostly be focused on it not being something other than what it was. Like not having a complex enough plot, not telling a deep enough story, not having deep enough social commentary about what it says about our society. And my argument against pretty much all of those points is, but what about the movie that it actually was? What we had there is, as kind of going back to Uche, what you brought up about Joaquin Phoenix being in essentially every frame of the film. And if that's not true, he's pretty much in every scene, or at least absolutely every major scene. And I think that can function as a tool that can serve two types of stories. So if a story is very, very complex to the point that you can't possibly really cover all the bases of the story with the right amount of detail, you can anchor that story from one person's perspective and have it be that person's experience of this larger story. And the other type of story that you can tell anchoring very strongly on one character is a story that's just about that character. And I think that what I got from this movie, or at least my interpretation of it, was it did a good job of sort of being both of those types of stories and not really being too much of one more than the other. Because there was the behind the scenes stuff about what was going on with Gotham's poverty and the divide between the upper class and the lower class of Gotham, the funding cuts to things like social services and mental health services, which is a problem even like in pretty much all around, at least North America, because like it's a problem in Canada too, and we have pretty much universal health care, and mental health is something that is at least in Ontario. I think if you basically tell a GP, like a general practitioner, that you have thoughts of self-harm, then you can get a referral to, I believe, a social worker, but that's about as far as it can go. But I know that, at least as far as from what I've heard about you guys, even for veterans to get like proper mental health care is a bit tricky. But I don't want to go too far down the real world road. But what I mean is, it was very clear that there were things going on in Gotham related to that stuff that were bigger than the actual story that was being told by the movie. Because the A story was very much focused on Arthur and just what this character was going through and his experience having some like delusions of grandeur, thinking that everything would be okay if he'd end up becoming this famous stand-up comedian, because since he was a little kid, with his laughter, his mom would be like, oh, you were put here to make everyone else laugh. That's why you're laughing all the time, even though it was probably that his brain triggered that laughter just to deal with the abuse that he'd suffered, at least at the hands of, I think they sort of implied, his foster father or stepfather.
His mom's boyfriend or something like that.
Yeah, like they didn't really get too into detail about it. But I think that that's kind of my point, that having us with the anchor for both of those two stories, like the B story about Gotham and the larger, we can't fit this into this movie unless we make it a 12-episode season of a TV show or like a 4-hour movie. So we're not really going to touch on it too much, except for that character's experience to it. And for this character and how he's going from a guy who nervously laughs because he doesn't know how to deal with the world to a guy who embraces the joke of how he sees the world and uses that to gain confidence, but not in a way that it's an inspiring story, because he's not painted as a hero at all, like even a little bit. Like I think it's fair to call him a sympathetic character or maybe an empathetic character, but he's not a character that you're rooting for the way you would be rooting for, say, Batman and Batman Begins.
Mm-hmm.
And like, actually, I recently watched a fair bit of Batman Begins while I was capturing footage for the last video I made. And that movie just does a great job of getting you on board with Bruce and his journey, and like going from being the like sort of spoiled rich kid that tries to tell off the gangster in the bar to being a guy that can actually change the city. And this is the opposite. It's like you're sort of on board and feeling for Arthur, but at the same time, at the end of it, you're just like, oh, he's doing it, and I've got a smile on my face, but everything that's happening here is horrible. And
you pity him. Like, you pity him.
Yeah.
Like that first half of the movie.
And it's sad that where he is on top of that cop car at the end of the movie is a better spot than he was when he was trying to stifle his laughter on the bus. And it makes you sad to be like, for so many people out there that, like, the ones that like the media was saying, oh, one of these guys is going to snap and end up shooting up a theater. You can see how someone would get from that place to the dark place where they're the center of attention for the wrong reasons. And it does, I think, at least made me think like, well, how many people that we just look at and is like, that guy's a little weird, eh? That maybe we should be like, hey, man, like maybe we should help get you talking to somebody about it. Seems like things are bothering you. If I'm not professionally accredited to help you, let's see if we can work on getting you talking to someone who could, you know? Yeah. Also, last thing, the music. Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I found very, and I think we all, like you said, we come across people in life and you see people who are, they just don't fit in, and you see that and you notice that. And, I kind of have a little perspective on it because, growing up, I was, and this is, the early 90s, as in elementary school, my parents are African. I have an African name. My name is a lot longer than Uche. And people, back then, that was something that I got made fun of a lot for. And, I found myself being most comfortable with the people who were kind of on the outskirts, the nerds, the goths, the kind of outside of the circle individuals in class and stuff like that. Those are the people I was most comfortable around. So as I got older, and as, obviously gained more confidence, became, had more of a presence around people, I always was generally pretty good at noticing those people who didn't fit in. And I would try to, I would go say hi. Sometimes just saying what's up, saying hi, showing that you recognize that they're there and that they are, that they're humans. And don't necessarily, when there were plenty of times when I'd be around other football players and we'd be out or we'd see somebody, we'd be hanging around somewhere. We see people who they would look at as like geeks and nerds and not really want to talk to them or just keep quiet, maybe make a couple of snickering jokes under their breath. And I would, at some point go over there and find a way to kind of have a common connection with that person. And a lot of times it came from like comic books. It came from video games. It came from things in the geek culture, because I was a part of the geek culture all my life. I always loved it. And, I recognized that a lot of times, weirdly enough, I had spoken to Mark Cuban one time, and he told me that the few players from the Indiana University football team that he became friends with after or before he became a billionaire were the only ones that ever came and talked to him, ever came and said hi. They didn't even, it's not even like they had like a huge or long conversation, but they acknowledged him. And those were the guys that he ended up, kind of being friends with throughout his college years before he, dropped out and started doing and sold off his radio streaming formulas. But Joker, you can tell throughout the entire movie that Arthur is really just looking for some kind of connection with humans, some kind of meaningful connection that isn't something based on what somebody can get out of him or what they need him to do or what kind of pawn they need him to play in whatever it is they're doing in their daily life. Just like with the situation in the first act of the movie when he's given the gun by the other clown that he works with. Yeah. Well, now that guy goes back behind his back and talks shit about him to the manager, to the owner of the clown club, and and puts him in a bad spot to where now he's getting fired from his job because partly because that guy basically threw him under the bus.
Yeah, the guy put him in a zero tolerance position.
Exactly.
He was on
put him in a bad spot. And it really, and that stayed with him. And you knew, and I mean, we all know how it is when somebody throws you under the bus, that's something that starts a little fire. You hold that grudge for a little while because that means they don't respect you one bit to just throw your name out there, and to avoid having any kind of scrutiny or criticism come their way, they throw your name under the bus, and dude paid for it dearly later on. And I must say that scene later on, as brutal as he took this dude out, how funny was it?
That was I think that was the kill in the movie that to me you could probably most safely call satisfying, because that guy seemed like he was legitimately a jerk that was like actively trying to make Arthur's life harder, whereas like the dudes on the train, like the dudes on the train, they were harassing the girl, but like, I mean, really, they were drunk dudes and were like, hey, like, pay attention to me. Like, they weren't really doing anything that bad. Like, they were being assholes, but like, I don't think they deserve to die. Whereas like setting your coworker up so that he ends up getting a gun caught on him, and then telling the boss like, oh yeah, he's been trying to buy guns off me. Like that's next level.
Yeah. Like you didn't offer it to him.
I didn't shed a tear for that guy.
Were you talking about the
little man?
Yeah.
No, the little man. He like, I'm happy he lived like that. He was like the only one that was cool to Arthur.
Hey, I'm busting out laughing so hard when I said no. Well, you know what I thought though? I thought that's Joker. A cruel joke.
I'm gonna let you live, but I'm gonna scare the shit out of you as you're walking out of the room.
Well, I think part of it too, it's like what got that type of laughter out of the audience was because it's so tense. Everybody's in this tense, it's a very tense scene, especially right after you kill the guy. And so you don't know too. You don't know whether he's gonna let this guy live or not. And so like, even when he's going to reach for the door, like it's kind of like you kind of laugh a little bit because you need to release a little bit. But when he did that whole, just scared him a little bit. Yeah, it was funny. It was funny.
Dude, I laughed.
I'm laughing at it even thinking about it now.
Because I was like, wait, he pulled on the door and it didn't open, and then the screen kind of pans up a little bit, and I was like, of course.
They made it a point. They made it a point.
Turn around and be like, hey Arthur.
It was hilarious, but they made it a point, right, to show when they walked in, he bolted that door.
Yeah.
He knew what was going to happen, right? But it was hilarious when they came back. I want to address real quick this dude in chat called the Crow, who is asking questions about the Matt Glitter song.
The Crow. Yeah, what's up, Crow? He did ask me about that in the comments when I posted.
Gary Glitter.
Gary Glitter. So yeah, there's a song used in there by Gary Glitter, who is a convicted pedophile.
I mean, it was in the Mighty Ducks too.
Let me find it.
Exactly.
Songs everywhere.
There's tons of people who have done terrible things that all have songs. Just because it's in a movie, I don't think that matters. And he asked me if I support pedos. No, you idiot.
No.
Obviously, I don't. Jeez.
I mean, obviously, Crow, nobody here is really supporting anything that has to do with pedophilia. Obviously,
Yeah.
that music was made long before anybody knew that he was a pedophile. That music was made and achieved the status of, of a legendary song way before any of that. I mean, come on, it's music. I mean, if we're gonna talk about it fitting into a movie, wouldn't this be the movie that it would at least fit into in some way? I mean, we're talking about a psychopathic murderer in this movie, so, and his descent into madness. So, I mean, yeah, nobody supports pedophilia and nobody supports the man who did it, but his music, I mean, hey.
I mean, even then, he's a one-hit wonder. Like, that was like his one song that was really big and that has kind of transcended his past. But I mean, like, you ever seen a Roman Polanski movie?
Yeah, exactly.
For real, like that dude won't even set foot in the U.S.
Yeah.
because he's gonna have agents waiting on him as soon as he gets here.
Oh, I mean, like for me to take a clear stand where I'm in the army and like I've been trained to fight, but I'm a medic. So even if I go to war, I would prefer to be saving lives rather than killing them. But if anyone ever touched my 2.5-year-old nephew, I would murder my way through buildings to get to the guy that did it. Like, that is sort of a zero tolerance thing that I would be about there. So yeah, no sympathy for Gary Glitter at all.
Apart from all the controversy, how did you feel? Did that song kind of strike you? Like, to me, that song felt a little out of place.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. What did you guys think about it?
It's actually, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Uche.
No. Honestly, when they started playing in the theater, what I thought, what kind of started running through my mind was just like it was his coming out party.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
So I was like, oh, he's hyped up. He's getting ready to go he's going to the show. It's about to be, Friday Night Lights. He's getting hyped up and going down the steps and doing his thing. So I was like, it's a little bit upbeat for what we've been watching, but hey, I'll take it,
Yeah.
What about you, Mark?
Well, I think that if you want, like, let's assume that let's assume for sake of argument, I don't know if he was the one who picked it, but let's say Todd Phillips picked that song and assume that he had the ability to Google Gary Glitter and what was, the deal with that. So like, I'll assume for sake of this point that it was a conscious decision. Maybe it was that song as opposed to any other, because anyone who knows about that situation would be made slightly uncomfortable by it, the way you should sort of feel a bit uncomfortable by Joker being in his makeup and like dancing his way down the stairs, knowing that he's at this point killed 3 people and very recently killed a 4th and is on his way to possibly kill more. Or like, I mean, I guess you think that as far as the narrative goes, he's on his way to kill himself, but it is sort of an upbeat and fun song, but maybe there's an element of like, but maybe I feel a little weird about this at the same time too. So trying to tie
I'll be honest,
meta narrative into it, I think that could be a reason.
Honestly, I had no idea about the whole I mean, somebody said don't say the P word on YouTube. So I mean,
if you're monetized,
I'm not monetized, so it doesn't.
Did you mean Polanski?
Yeah, I didn't know he was a Polanski guy. Like, no, but I didn't really know the history of that of the artist until just a few days ago. And I mean, I didn't care. I was like, okay, it's a good song. I didn't know that he was a pedophile, but what does that have to do with that actual song? He's not talking. Is he talking about pedophilia in that song?
Yeah, I think if everything comes out about R. Kelly and he did anything right, am I gonna have to go back and rethink every time I was drunk?
Every single one of the songs is about sex.
Ignition. Like, really?
I'm most happy about the Chappelle sketches that came out of that.
Hey, Chappelle called it like a decade ago, y'all.
Yeah,
true.
Now, what about the hallucinations? Like, where do we fall with all of that? Because, I hate to kind of talk about it because I don't want the whole movie to have been a hallucination. But there are some people who are coming out and, they have theories that it's possible that he hallucinated this entire movie and that him laughing at the end in the insane asylum was, actually what was really going on. He actually comes back from that daydream of the entire Joker movie, and that's why he says to the psychiatrist that you wouldn't get it when she said, "What's the joke?" Now, I'm thinking that maybe no, I think he did it. I think he did it because after that point, apparently he kills her. So, and he's trying to find a way, or he's getting chased around the insane asylum, right as the end banner comes up. But what do you guys think? I know, really, I want us to kind of talk about the progression of hallucinations throughout the movie. Like, what's real, what wasn't, and was it all real, or was it all, we know what parts weren't real, but was the main points of the movie real or not?
There's so much, like, once that reveal happens, that chick, that I will say, when you're like, it's supposed to be like this dude's banging this chick, I was like, this is garbage. I was mad actually that he was able to get with her. I'm like, that's not realistic. This is stupid, right? And so that kind of irritated me throughout the movie. And then you find out that she's fake, and you go back to all these moments and you think about what was real and what wasn't. When he was up there, at the comedy, doing his comedy stand-up thing, and she was there and everybody's laughing, right? Turns out she's not. And was everybody laughing? Was that thing clipped up on the show to show that no one liked it? Like, you start thinking about things like that. And then, like, the fact that Thomas Wayne and his mother, that definitely didn't happen. But then when he's putting his makeup on in his mom's room, he grabs a picture which looks like his mom when she was younger. And on the back of it, it says something like, you're so pretty, you smile, or something like that. Signed.
Yeah, love your smile.
TW. Thomas Wayne.
That's what I've been stuck on.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, see. Yeah, well, that's the thing that, like, even after the movie, I was still questioning whether or not Thomas Wayne, and I've seen this too, because there's a bunch of theories out there, especially the one you talked about, Uche, like that I think that's what makes it so great, this movie, is because there's just so, there's that kind of freedom and openness to it. And it is kind of one of those things where, like, almost like Inception, but I think even more so, to where you can be like, well, what was exactly real and what wasn't? And I think that's what makes this movie, in that sense, it's kind of, it's kind of fun to try to imagine it maybe this way or that way. And like you said, like, I didn't catch that Thomas Wayne stuff on the picture, but that was the thing too, where I'm like, well, did he put her away? Did Thomas Wayne maybe have an affair with her and put her away? And, and all these things were, attributed to her, because to me, his mom did not seem like necessarily like a cruel person, she might have been a little off, but she didn't seem like a sadistic or, anything that's described beforehand, or after the fact. So, but I don't know. How did you take that?
Man, as far as the Thomas Wayne thing goes, honestly, okay, so for hardcore DC fans, it may be hard to accept it. I'm a hardcore DC fan, but in knowing that this is not part of DC canon intentionally, I think it would be an amazing twist that he is actually the half brother of Bruce Wayne. It would make a lot of things make sense when you talk about the dynamic between Batman and Joker, why they need each other to exist in order for the other person to be validated. And in a world where you don't have to be tied to the chronological order of the canon and the timeline and how it's set up and all of the established lore, hell yeah, I think he's Bruce Wayne's half brother. It makes sense. And that picture, it's hard, like, that is something different. The picture is something different. I mean, you can fake the records, you can fake the adoption. Thomas Wayne has that power. He can do that. But his own personal message Of course, he would put TW. He's not going to sign his signature. I mean, to me, that makes sense. And I believe that he is more than likely the half brother of Bruce Wayne. I just feel I feel that's right as far as how the movie put it out there to us.
Or did his mother, in her delusions, write that to convince herself?
But she didn't take the picture.
That wasn't her handwriting.
And she didn't take the picture. So, I mean,
it's just a picture of her.
But why would he take a picture of somebody who works for him?
I think what Ryan's saying is what if the mother signed the TW? Mm-hmm. And I think that the reason that, at least in the narrative of the movie, I think they were saying that it at least was not her, or if it was, she was being really sneaky, is that you see her handwriting and how she writes Thomas Wayne, and it looks much, and for lack of a better way of saying this, and probably someone's going to tear me apart in the comments, but her W looks a lot more like girly, like it's got like curls. And stuff in it. Whereas that was like a very kind of, at least as far as I remember it now, it's been like about 5 days since I've seen it, but like a very harsh kind of jagged W that looked very different from her handwriting. And I thought, to me, that seemed pretty clear that it at least was fairly strong evidence that in this movie, the half brother thing is true. But I think the important thing about the way it was done was that he crumples up the photo. So his whole thing is, it's like it doesn't matter. And I think it does. Like that's the thing that I like that Rian Johnson did in Looper about his time travel rules, where he was just like, no, now I'm going to get everyone to kill me. But I thought in Looper, because Looper was his own universe where he wasn't destroying another franchise, him saying like, there's time travel rules, we're not really going to worry too much about it because it's not very important to this story. And it's that kind of thing. It's like the director or the writer, whoever you could say, saying to the audience, it's like, this is like some pretty strong evidence here, but this character doesn't give a shit. And so he crumples it up and throws it away to be like, okay, so for the Joker moving forward, it's not going to have anything to do with his motivation because he's grown beyond that. But before we move too far past delusions, because I actually did have some thoughts about this, I agree with, I forget if it was even one of the Red Letter Media guys or both of them were saying that I think the delusions with Domino, ZZ based is, I forget, I don't know.
Zazie Beats.
Zazie Beats? Yeah, cool. Well, she's very pretty. I like her, but she I think that the thing I did not like about the way they revealed that was the flashbacks to, like, the Fight Club flashbacks of like, oh, here are these scenes we've seen of them together, and now here it is with her gone. Because I think that it would have been significantly more powerful if it was just, you're Arthur, you live down the hall, right? You've got to get out of my house. Because I think everyone knew. Like, was anyone confused as to what was happening when she clearly didn't know him when he was waiting in her apartment? Like, especially because earlier on we'd seen him imagine being on Murray's show.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't think he was convinced that that was real. I think he knew that he was daydreaming there. But I think that scene establishes that this guy creates some little narratives in his head that may not be 100% true. So having that woman there supporting him through the whole thing, and like, especially it being like the first time he basically acts as the Joker, he just like opens her front door and starts making out with her without a single word spoken. Like, there was something unreal about that already. So I think if she just hardly knew who he was, that would have been enough. I didn't think we needed the flashbacks. As far as the entire movie existing in his head up until the you wouldn't get it part, I don't know. I didn't get that from it. I think that goes to the like, oh, what if it was all a dream? Like, you could say that about almost any movie. Pick a scene where someone looks like they might almost die.
So that last scene, did it look to you guys like Joaquin wasn't as skinny? Like it was done, like it was done post?
I think you're onto something, Ryan, because I talked about it with a friend of mine, and well, no, like, I think they put that scene at the end of the movie because, especially maybe some of the things that were being talked about, I could be wrong on this too, but like, if they had ended the scene with him on top of the car and the city's in flames and he's the Joker, I think that they were maybe a little fearful that would have been taken as like, glorifying this character.
Yeah,
I think that might have been the original ending. Because think about this, the beginning scene, and like with movies, sometimes there's the beginning, the beginnings relate to endings and endings relate to beginnings. What's the first scene of him? He's pulling his lips, right?
Yeah.
The end scene with the blood, he's doing the same thing. It's a little different, but it's that same thing, but he's a totally different character.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think Todd Phillips and company, they intended that to be the last scene, but I think Warner Brothers might have said, can you give us maybe a lighter ending, because this is just a little too heavy.
Yeah.
It's not, Warner Brothers would never direct their creative team to do stuff like that. That doesn't sound like WB.
That's ridiculous. But my friend that I saw it with, you can see the first thing I was saying when we walked out of the movie is all I was thinking in my head when he was on top of that car was just like, oh, credits, end this movie, this movie now.
Yeah.
Because that as much as I kind of liked the last scene, and I thought that the bloody footprints in the hallway sort of saved it for me, all I could think when it panned in and he was back in Arkham was, oh, don't go on for another 20 minutes. Just don't. Like, that was such a strong ending, and if you just cut to credits there, this movie would be like, I don't want to say, I never want to say the word perfect, but I'll use Uche's masterpiece word.
Yeah,
I think it just, and I don't think it lost it in that last scene, but I don't think they needed the epilogue. Although I kind of like the vaudeville chasing back and forth down the hallway and the like kind of old timey the end credit come up like that. That was all right.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw him. Like, he looked fatter, not fatter, but he doesn't look anorexic, right?
Yeah.
So I was thinking that had to be something they added afterwards, after he had gained weight back.
It's crazy. Now that I think about it, you guys are totally right. I really thought that the him on top of the police car, the way that it kind of faded to dark, I thought it was over, and I was like, oh my God,
I know, right?
This is unbelievable. They're ending it just like that. The city is his. Chaos ensues. The Joker has won. I was like, that's ballsy as fuck in my mind. That's what I was thinking. If this movie ends right now, and then it brought us back to the insane asylum. So definitely, I do kind of, I agree with the fact that does now in hindsight, it seems like that was added on, because it was just a very slow fade to black, which usually means it's over when you're watching a movie. And again, it didn't take away from it that they added that little epilogue part to it. It didn't hurt the movie at all, but that does kind of bring, it would have been a much scarier feel for people who don't understand what kind of movie or what this is, that this is just the Joker. It would have been a terrifying ending for them, because we can only imagine what kind of headlines we would have saw after that.
And I think it's hard to think of where that might have changed, because I could see the epilogue even being in the script, because when you're writing something, it can be really easy to add extra stuff on top of what would be the best ending, and be thinking, okay, yeah, no, this wraps up this little loose end and that one, and it's fine. And then it can get hard once you're seeing it all in post to do the kill the baby thing, where it's like, I like this last little scene and I enjoy the vaudeville running back and forth in the hallway and the bloody footprints in the hallway, but if we get the Ivan Ortega cut, is Ivan putting that last little epilogue in the movie? And I would let him answer that, but I think I would cut it out. I think it was good. I don't think it was great, but I think the cop car ending was great.
Yeah, that cop car ending, man. I've been on YouTube searching and looking at every version of that from theaters. Just and the reactions were crazy, because every one of the videos, there's a reaction in the theater when he does the bloody smile. Yeah. Everybody's kind of like, yeah.
So Jeremy Johns had a spoiler talk. He's like, stop putting the bloody smile in the thumbnails. That's a big moment.
But yeah, I think that the movie itself really it's you know, and I tweeted this out. You know, this movie holds a mirror up to society's face. I think that's what it really does. It holds a mirror up and it forces us to look at it. And and I think the most powerful line, and it's crazy. I'm kind of stealing this from Grace Randolph, the film critic, but I agreed with her. The most powerful line in the movie was right before he shot Robert De Niro's character, Murray.
Yes.
He said, you know, why do you guys care about these rich guys who treat, you know, who I killed, when if it was me dead in the streets, you guys would just step over my body? And then, you know, follow that up. He goes, what do you get when you cross a mentally ill person, a mentally ill loner who, what do you say? Mentally ill loner who you, fuck, I forget the words. Something to the effect of, what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner who, you know, you treat like trash, or, you know, treat like garbage, and something else. I mean, somebody look it up, because I don't want to do that.
Yeah, let me check it out.
I'm trying to look for the script right now.
But
it was basically, what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner in a society that doesn't give
give a
society on a Joker
like
stream? Everybody take a shot.
Yeah. You know, what do you get? You get what you effing deserve.
Dude, and when he said that, I was just like, fucking right.
I totally like understand the what they're saying. When he said mentally ill loner, I kind of, like, for a second kind of cringed, because that's like, it's true. It's not that that's inaccurate.
Yeah,
it's like something we hear. That's something we hear from the media so much, right? About like the shooters or whatever like that. And I kind of was like, I don't really like that phrase, but it is right. It's accurate. But yeah, it was so powerful, man.
So, you know, for me, just thinking about, you know, it's crazy, because that when he showed up on the late night show, it's kind of reminiscent of the Dark Knight Returns, that scene where he goes on the late night show in the comic book and in the movies, the animated movies. I thought it was pretty impressive how he did the spin, the little pirouettes. I thought that was pretty impressive, because I mean, it kind of really gave him like some kind of, it's just weird. It gave him that Joker feel all the way.
Yeah.
A couple spins, walked over, sat down, and it was really nice to see that, you know, it almost felt like an act. The way that he reached into his back pocket, pulled out his notebook, started looking through, because, you know, the whole thing was that Robert De Niro's character made, you know, he basically, you know, burned him on national TV with his stand-up that he bombed earlier in the movie. So you know that he's coming back to make a point about that to Robert De Niro's character, but also at the same time, as he pulls out his notebook, and he's still kind of in that mood of being in awe of being on the show a little bit. He's wanting to look for, you know, a good joke to tell. And he sees that line that he wrote in the dark Sharpie ink that said he hopes his death will have more value than his life did. And he gets a little bit somber, but then they kind of start laughing at him. And I thought that was crucial. Because as soon as they started laughing and making fun of the fact that he pulled out a notebook, it went dark. He went dark. He was like, fuck the joke. Now it's time for action. And Robert De Niro's character, you know, he was an asshole. I mean, we all kind of know that. I mean, that's kind of what the character was meant to be played as. And you know, I don't think Robert De Niro did like an especially exceptional job or a bad job at all, but I think that Joaquin's performance in that scene just kind of elevated everybody else who was in it. Like it made you kind of dislike De Niro's character more. And you know, it was weird. I didn't remember hearing anything De Niro was saying at the last part where he was saying, "You want to hear one more joke?" and he started telling him, and I could not, that's how in the movie I was, is that I didn't hear anything De Niro was saying. I was just laser focused on what Joker was saying. And the look on his face right before he shot him. Oh my God, it was amazing. It was like rage, like utter contempt, like I am going to obliterate you from this earth right now, and just bang. And the way that they did it, I mean, I don't know how that, I'm sure they used a little bit of computer graphics, maybe some practical effects there as well, but it was.
They didn't actually shoot someone in the head.
Yeah. It made it look like they actually just shot him right there.
Is that how De Niro actually went out?
Yeah.
But what do you guys think about the violence? I mean, as far as just the violent scenes, I mean, they all kind of had a purpose and they were centralized. Each scene where there was violence, it was centralized towards one character or one group of characters, and it was intense and it was pointed. Which is obviously a stark contrast to what a lot of people were a lot of people who hadn't seen the movie were trying to lead us to believe that it was going to be some type of over the top violence, kind of movie. Even some of the critics who came out of the movie were, they made a point about the violence, but me myself, I didn't feel like the violence was. I didn't feel like it was unnecessarily gory. I didn't feel like it was unnecessarily long. I felt like it happened, it was done, and they moved on. Yeah. And then you start.
Okay, I got the script. If anyone wants to hear that part. So, what is it? Was it Arthur's speech at the end?
Yeah.
How about another joke, Murray?
Right before
so he says, "How about another joke, Murray?" He says, "No, I think I've had enough of your jokes. What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? I'll tell you what you get. You get what you fucking deserve." Arthur suddenly shoots Murray in the head, and audience starts running off in terror. Spoiler warning.
Yeah. Like getting back to that violence, everything had a purpose. And that's one thing I'll say about this whole movie. Every scene meant something. I don't feel like there was any scenes of this movie that didn't mean anything in the long run. It's all building on what is going to eventually happen. You might not understand the point of the scene until the end. But yeah, the violence that, like I said, how many people, the two guys on the train died, right?
Yeah.
Three guys on the train died. His clown partner died. Mm-hmm. He killed his mother. He killed Murray.
Mm-hmm.
One thing beats. That's what I was gonna say. I was wondering if, I really wonder what happened in that apartment.
I didn't think he did, because the way that movie played, the way that it played out, if he would have killed them, we would have saw him kill them.
Are you sure though? With all of the talk about this movie, you think that's something?
Because they went no holds barred. I mean, why would
you didn't
there with at least?
I think it's creepier not knowing.
I think it is too, and that's why I think, like, again, when it comes to like the interpretations of the hallucinations or whatever, or possible like this is another thing too, where it's kind of up in the air. Mm-hmm. Like they really don't say one way or another. It almost seems like it's the way it's cut. Like it could have been a couple minutes after the fact that he left. So, I don't think it's necessarily like in continuity, like showing him leave, but I do think it's on the table. It's up in the air. I don't think he would have killed the kid though.
Yeah.
Because he didn't kill the midget. He didn't kill the little guy.
Chat, Frank the bunny, white man can't be showed killing a black person at all. The therapist at the end is pretty clearly gets killed. She's black.
Yeah, but think about this as well. In every person that he killed, you saw a representation that he killed them in blood.
Yeah, that's true.
We didn't see blood on his hands when he left her apartment. We didn't see blood in any. They didn't make any kind of quick cut to any little part of his body that might have had blood on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his mom, he did suffocate, so there wasn't. That's one where there wasn't any blood.
That was so cold, man. That was so cold. Like when he realizes what's happened, and my whole life's an effing joke. Like I've never been happy in my entire life, right? Like, and just nonchalant grabs a pillow, kills her. It's like, and that was that, right? There was no gore, there was no violence. that was as
It was
shocking as
quiet.
any other. It was as shocking as any other death.
Quiet, somber murder. And then right after that, he stands by the window and stares out at the sun.
Takes a smoke break.
Yeah,
I just see a comment here. Mark Brennan, RoboCop 2014 was more violent and it was PG-13. I actually know some of the real cyborgs that were in that movie. A girl that works out at the same gym as me, Chantel. She has an above knee amputation, and she was in Gary Oldman's like prosthetics clinic. They like go around and hire amputees for things like that. So.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Sounds like I've got an equal opportunity lawsuit waiting. They didn't even take a look at my resume.
John Snow says Joker movie reminded me of late 90s, early 2000s movies, quality. And yeah, I mean, obviously it has a lot of influence from Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. And those movies, again, I mean, that's cinema. Those are movies that, you know, the 90s was probably the last decade before the overflow of CGI. The 90s was that decade of actual where you had to actually like build a story, build the acts in an appropriate order. You know, these movies took 8, 9, 10 months to film because there was no green screening. There wasn't a lot of cutting corners with technology. And, you know, you saw, you know, practical effects that were the majority of the film, if there were any effects at all. And
yeah, I think it's safe to say that for genre pictures like sci-fi, fantasy, you're probably right. I think it was probably actually, you maybe argue it was the Star Wars prequels that sort of
started that whole
age of CGI overpowering practical effects. Because even like when you look at the first like Jurassic Park movie, like it was a big CGI movie, but there were tons of practical effects in Jurassic Park. Like most of the dinosaurs you see are practical.
Yeah, animatronics, you know, they had actual machines that ran it, like even going back to the Predator. You know, Predator was like a 6'8", 6'9" machine. Yeah. I mean, even Mortal Kombat, Goro was a machine. He was an animatronics machine.
Big animatronic.
Wow.
So the budget for this film was around 55 million, right? That's like the rumored, and then plus whatever it is
stupid cheap for the kind of money that they're making. That's like horror movie budgets.
Yeah, that's horror movie budgets. I mean,
like doubling their money in the first day deal.
and I also read something about you know, when we're in that opening weekend hype still, and it was like starting to take off, that when you look at the people that were talking about it on all levels of social media, it had like less hits than a normal comic book movie does. A normal comic book movie had like something like 630 million like impressions or something. And this one only had like around 420 million. So it wasn't being talked about as much somehow, yet it's still, people were going to this movie, which I find strange because obviously we're in kind of this YouTube bubble, right? Where we all talk about what's going on. So it seems to us like everyone's talking about it. So
that's true, but even, I mean, think about, at least from my perspective, the last 3 days I've done gaming streams on my channel. It was mostly just like I was trying to work out the kinks of like streaming a game. And as much as I wanted to talk about Joker, even though there's not much of a plot in the movie that's like super spoilable or anything, I think the moments in the movie can hit you so hard if you don't see them coming that I was actively stopping myself anytime I was like saying like, oh yeah, Joker was great. Like, I can't believe that actually, you know what? I'm not going to talk about this because I didn't like title Joker spoilers at the beginning of the stream. So in the event that one person clicked on my like 5 people watching gaming stream and heard, oh yeah, when he kills those guys on the subway, I would have not wanted to be responsible for that. So I think that there might be an element of people just not wanting to ruin it for other people and just saying to their friends, yeah, just go see this movie like ASAP. Go this weekend.
Well, I mean, and you look at those box office numbers, man. I mean, we're 4 days in, 5 days in now, and it's surely top 300 million by now. But it was sitting at around 290 something million on Monday. And, you know, internationally, I think it did about 140 something million, 148 million.
150 something opening weekend.
Yeah, for the international you're talking about.
Yeah, for the international market.
Yeah, and it did. I think it did 96
96,
domestic. Yeah, it had a strong. It's a really strong opening, especially for a movie with that low of a budget. Like they're already profitable.
I looked at a. I wanted to know. I did a video on box office a little late in the day, unfortunately Monday, but I wanted to see what people were talking about back in like July, and like the estimates around then were like $60 million. That's what people were thinking domestically.
Yeah. So. Even on the higher end, let's say like 30 days or 45 days before it came out, it was like 88. I think it was like in high 80s, 90 at the most. And that was if it overperformed. And I mean, obviously 96 million, it definitely overperformed. But I think also a lot of that had to do with the negative backlash or the negative effect, the whiplash effect of the media trying to kind of put this movie under the table, like trying to, beat it down over their fears of it influencing incel violence, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But I think that the media had a lot to do with its success. I think that we're finally starting to see a bit of a turn in how audiences and just how the public in general is starting to receive a lot of this outrage culture, like where people are just outraged over every little thing. And Joker was one that they thought they could easily, kind of pin down with that kind of narrative. And it literally, I mean, it blew up in their face. I mean, I feel like a lot of people were turned on to go see it who would have never even thought about the movie just because they were hearing so much about a negative effect that it's supposed to have on society because of, the quote unquote violence that was going to inspire somebody to go out and do something wild. But obviously, as we all know, the movie didn't even play out in a fashion. I mean, when you talk about that kind of a movie, if you're even going to bring up that kind of a narrative, I mean, you would have expected it to be something like Natural Born Killers. You would have
exactly
that kind of style of movie before you start saying that it's going to be a movie that influences people to do stuff. But this movie was just a very intricate, a very well thought out, well put together, very uniquely built story, uniquely just filmed. And I mean, man, it's so hard to really like describe it in a singular way because there's so many aspects to it. There's so many layers to it that you got to kind of pull back, and none of it, glorifies any violence. None of it glorifies any decisions that Arthur made. A lot of it just points to this is what in today's society, if you compare the kind of things that this guy is going through to how we operate on a daily basis from top to bottom in our society, there are a lot of similarities. And we've already seen the results of what those, what the kind of actions that society has against these people can create. It manifests a lot of ill will towards fellow man. It manifests a lot of pent up anger and violence. And, we've seen that play out in real life. And this movie is just kind of just reiterating parts of that, but it doesn't glorify it in any way.
Yeah,
I think it does exactly the opposite. I think if anything, it shows you just how horrible violence can be, with how bloody that some of these scenes get, how realistic in that sense they get, and I mean, if you think about the glorification of violence, you think about. I think about Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, Commando, or some guy, having a semi-automatic blowing away like 60 bad guys,
or
right?
John Wick.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's true. Yeah, something like that. That's kind of cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this movie shows you, where you see like pieces of brain or stuff like on his face after he kills like his former coworker. And there's just a blood splatter like on the wall, like all over the wall. Like that's what it really looks like if you shoot somebody.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it's I mean, again, to me, it's like I don't see why anybody would want to become something like that.
Yeah.
Like, so I think it does. I think it works the opposite way, in terms of like, I don't think it necessarily glorifies violence. It shows you just how horrific it can truly be. So
yeah, like it's not, there's not a grand, extravagant explosion of blood and body flailing back and forth. He shot Murray in the head. I mean, he just went limp back into the seat. He shot him another time in the chest. You didn't see any blood come out when he shot him the second time.
Very matter of fact.
Very matter of fact, very blunt. When he banged his buddy's head, the guy who threw him under the bus, when he banged his head up against the wall 8-9 times, yeah, you saw splatters, but it wasn't, there wasn't an overuse of this, the bone crackling sound effects. There wasn't an over abundance of blood. There wasn't a big pool just filling up, one side of the room. It just was a very sobering, very almost somber acts of violence. Like when it happened, everybody in my theater, it was just quiet. There wasn't even like, oh my God, like it was just damn,
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, it's unique that the movie affects you in a way where you don't even look at that kind of a scene. You don't look at these scenes of violence and think to yourself, that was kind of cool. You're just like, shit, that was real as fuck. That's how I felt. I was like, God damn, that's real. Like,
yeah,
just happened and that's it. And one scene that I think we partially miss or forget about, which I thought was eerily beautiful. And I put this kind of up there as maybe the second or third best scene for me in the movie, was after he shot those guys on the subway, when he runs into that abandoned or that dirty bathroom, and he just kind of goes into a trance and starts that little Joker dance. Like, yeah. I thought there was something beautiful about it. You had that violin playing in the background, and it was just very slow, very, very, just very intimate almost. Like
he was starting to dance more in real life the way he thought he could dance in his head. Like he was trying to imagine dancing with doesn't he have like kind of
he had a couple of weird scenes where he kept trying to dance, and I'm like,
and he wasn't really very good at it. After he kills the guys, he's moving as if he can move more confidently.
Yeah.
But just before we move too far on from the violence, I remember when I was I guess I was 14 in 98 when Saving Private Ryan came out. And I remember that the level of violence in Saving Private Ryan, particularly in the D-Day invasion, made me think about war and even things that I was seeing in other types of media. Like I think the original Medal of Honor game came out around that time too. And it was before video games had started getting realistic enough that blood was something that you could see a lot of, but movies, obviously, like you've been able to see blood in movies for decades at this point. And I remember that after that, anytime there was a war scene in a movie, it would actually be the opposite effect. If it was like PG-13, like person gets hit and you see like a bit of dust behind them that doesn't look anything like blood, that to me, that started to look creepier. Because I was like, oh, that seems like it's not what a bullet would do to a person.
Yeah, desensitizes you a little bit to it.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, and I think that when people make the argument that when we see these graphic depictions of violence in media, it desensitizes us to the violence. I sort of think of it the other way around. I think when we see glorified versions of violence with the teeth taken out, like where there isn't that sense of this is what actually happens to a person if they're hit by a bomb or hit by a bullet or stabbed with a knife, that it kind of makes you like think that, oh, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe they just like get hit a couple times and fall over, and like then the hero keeps on doing their thing. Whereas I think that it's valuable to every so often have a movie, and I mean, like there are plenty of more violent movies that we will see, like not in the grand like mainstream comic book realm, but having a movie that hits on a wider level, like Saving Private Ryan or like Joker, that shows, hey, when these things happen to a person, it's not pretty. It's like there's nothing peaceful about it. It's horrible, and we should be bothered by it. We shouldn't be super comfortable with it. And yeah, so that's sort of always how I've looked at, or at least since I was like 14-ish. Again, when I saw Saving Private Ryan, how I've looked at violence in media. And I think this movie did a good job of that.
Yeah. Saving Private Ryan was definitely one of those movies that first time I saw it, I went with my family, with my parents, brothers and sisters. And I mean, my mom and dad were crying, and I was like, this is just action. This is just action. I didn't get it necessarily the way that I should have. But as I got older and would see, you see Saving Private Ryan every year. But, seeing that blood, seeing the actual true to life physical representation of how people die when it's violent, how things happen, how the blood can really, be shocking. I agree with you. I think that when you see it in those movies, the movies that use it that way, generally the movies have a lot more in terms of context and there's a lot more meat in the movie to kind of add to the effect that the violence also gives. And Joker, definitely represents that. Anybody got, if you're in the chat, you can throw questions out there. We'll try and answer them. I see a lot of comments, but not a ton of questions.
Every now and then.
Yeah. Uche, I really appreciate you having me on, man. I could only stay on for about an hour. I got a video to edit and some kids to see and stuff like that. But thanks for having me on, man. I'm looking forward to you getting monetized very soon.
For sure.
John, great talking to you again, man. It was awesome.
Likewise, man.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
And Mark, keep grinding away, man. I know you're making that content, dude. It's awesome. So Mark the Cyborg puts out some incredible gaming content on Geeks and Gamers. Check out his stuff and make sure you check out his channel as well, because he needs some watch time so he can get up there too.
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm working on now. Thanks very much, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem, man. But I will talk to you guys later. And don't forget, you get what you effing deserve.
Yes, sir.
See you around.
Have a good one, brother. But yeah, so just to kind of, segue into a little bit about the future, there was a little bit of talk about, well, actually not a little bit of talk. Joaquin Phoenix did an interview where he actually kind of opened the door into there being a sequel to this movie. Now he's pretty interested in continuing on with this movie. And now, if we all remember, before they announced Joker, or when they announced Joker, actually before Joker was ever announced, Joaquin Phoenix was kind of on record as saying that he never wanted to join a franchise. He never wanted to be a part of a franchise. He's kind of got that reputation as not wanting to, be held down by any kind of multi-movie deal. He wants to kind of stay in that indie lane. More art pieces rather than the big blockbusters. But now he's got a taste of that big time fame after the Joker, and he looks like he's enjoying that a little bit. And now he's talking about and I think the quote was something along the lines of that he never saw this role as being a dream role, but now after the fact, after the movie's done, after his experience with Todd Phillips, he now sees this Joker role as his dream role. So what does that mean? He said he actually has been talking with Todd Phillips about potentially seeing what more they could do with Joker. What does that mean? Are we getting a sequel?
I think that with Joaquin Phoenix in particular, and he's one of the few actors in the world that I think has this outlook, and that I think it would be better if more actors had the clout to have. But sadly, it's one of those things that, especially if you're an up-and-coming actor, you can't really look at the industry like this. Mm-hmm. But he is notoriously ultra picky about which scripts he agrees to take part in. So I think that this can go one of two ways, and both of which I think benefit us as appreciators of film. That one, this is a one-off movie. There's never going to be another Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, and that incredible movie that we got is just never going to be ruined, and I'm fine with that scenario. Or two, it gets Warner Brothers to get their shit together hire some writers that will take their time, really carefully write a script that is masterpiece tier, that they can send to Joaquin Phoenix, have him read it and say, I need to do this movie. And either way, that benefits us, because either the movie that we saw isn't going to be ruined, or we're going to get either, be it a Joker 2 or a Batman film with this Joker as the antagonist, maybe a few years down the line, with some more, I guess, experience under his belt as like a supervillain, because I think that the Joker that we see at the end on the cop car there, he'd be no match for Batman. Like Batman would be a little kid at that point, so you can't have Batman go up against the Joker that we see at the end there. Like, that wouldn't happen. So there would need to be, probably what they should have done between episode 7 and 8 of Star Wars is taken a bit of break and had some character development maybe happen in between there, so that we can believe why Arthur Fleck is now Joker, the Joker that, maybe not the Joker that we know from before, but a Joker that we can see going toe to toe with a greatest detective style Batman. Because I've heard, actually, at least, I don't know if it would be the Robert Pattinson one he'd be going up against, which would make sense though with the timelines, that apparently Matt Reeves is shooting to make it more of a world's greatest detective Batman series.
So noir style Batman.
Yeah, like one that focuses on the detective stuff more so than the ninja stuff, I guess you could say, in the Nolan movies. But
Warner Brothers also told him to add more action into the movie.
Yeah, and
so that now kind of moves it away from the same. You know, it was in its original form. Matt Reeves had it. Had the movie set up to be a more noir style film, less, more of a slow burn like Joker.
Yeah.
And of course, Warner Brothers saw that, and that's why it took so long for them to get to the point where they're now going to start filming in January, because he had to go back and kind of rework it to add more action. So you're moving it away from that style of, now you're moving it back to a style that pulls it away from the kind of universe that you have with Joker. So now it makes it harder for you to find a way to kind of blend or kind of connect those two worlds. Because it's rumored that it takes place in the 90s and Joker takes place in the early 80s. So by just doing the math, if you put it somewhere in the mid 90s, that'll be a 20-something-year-old Batman versus a 40 or 50-something-year-old Joker, maybe. We're not really sure how old he is in the movie. I'm thinking he may be mid 30s. He looks older, obviously, because the city is worn on him. Over his time as Arthur Fleck, he has taken a lot of, his body has taken a lot of shit just from the environment that it was in. So I can see where he looks older, but maybe he's 30, maybe he's 33, maybe he's 35.
Yeah, so if Batman is 10 in Joker, Batman could start doing Batman stuff when he's 19, 20.
Yeah.
I always saw Batman Year One, like Frank Miller's Year One, which granted isn't like whatever DC calls their like 616 universe. Like the Frank Miller Batman books were always like Elseworlds Batman stories. So I know Year One isn't like the official origin, even though it's more of a Jim Gordon book. But I always kind of saw him in that book as being like around college age, like university-ish.
Or maybe fresh out, like 21, 22. Mm-hmm. But definitely, I think about it. I think, in my opinion, just the way that this movie was, maybe before, without seeing it, I would have thought, hey, if it's good, do a sequel. But now, honestly, I don't want to see a sequel. Yeah. I don't want to see a sequel. I don't. Just because this movie changes the genre in the same way that The Dark Knight changed the genre. Mm-hmm. It now takes what we perceive as good, as a good quote unquote comic book movie, and it completely shifts that perception to another stratosphere. And to follow that up, you cannot do anything but damage the original movie by doing a sequel. Like that's the only way I can see it moving forward. You don't gain anything by doing a sequel. Nothing.
Well, I mean, there's always the Godfather.
Yeah. I was thinking that, Mark, and that I mean I think that's like that would be like the impossible follow up, right? Like Godfather was incredible, and Francis Ford Coppola manages to match it. Some people say Godfather 2 is even better. So I think it can be done, but I see what you're saying. Uchi. Like it's it's really that's why like remakes, when they try to remake like a masterpiece, like you're better off just not touching it. And how many times have we gotten sequels where it's just like a shell of the former thing that we had before? So I think if it's Todd Phillips and he's got a same writing partner, I think I trust him to do it. If they're gonna do a sequel, it would be really cool to see him interact with Batman. But I totally get the sentiment. I'm kind of torn on it myself. I think it's like one of those things where you can only like judge it after the fact. It's like where you're like, oh shoot, yeah, they shouldn't have did it. But I think I could probably hold this film in isolation though, no matter whatever they did after it. Like I don't think anything can take away from this movie. Like it will always be like Logan in a sense. Like I don't necessarily think about X-Men Origins when I think of Logan.
Yeah.
Like I just think of Logan. Like that's just one hell of a great comic book movie. So I guess I'd be willing. It's like, yeah, I'd be willing for them to put the chips on the table and try to do something just as good and maybe potentially better. I'd be willing for them to take the chance to do it. It could be a mess, but Todd Phillips is proof. He knows what he's doing, so that's why I guess I trust him to do it.
I guess pondering on it. I mean, I can see your point, and you could be right. I mean, definitely. If it's the same team, if it's the same group of people who are going to put it together and make a sequel, then I would be able to trust that they would put together. I wouldn't expect necessarily Joker again. I wouldn't expect that kind of movie, maybe, but I would expect it to be a top tier level kind of movie. Yeah. And maybe and I'm just obviously speculating, but maybe you take it in the direction of a movie like Seven, and it's more Jim Gordon as the main character hunting Joker. And now you have a scenario where Joker is not necessarily in the movie in the same respects that he was in the first Joker. It's more of a character study about Jim Gordon and his flirting with insanity, trying to catch Joker, trying to piece together why Joker's doing what he's doing, trying to understand, because again, it's a deep dive into trying to understand the madness.
And if you have Batman in the movie, have him be like a shadowy figure that you don't really see much of and is in maybe like 4 minutes of the film.
Exactly. And this is more of a level playing field between a police officer who just got to Gotham. Gotham is in the midst of trying to rebuild itself from the chaos that started with Joker, and now maybe 6, 7, 8 years later has reached a boiling point, and now they're looking outside of the city to try and find help. And Jim Gordon comes in, and kind of like how it was in year one, he comes in, he starts to try and clean up the police department. But there's these serial killings going on, and now it's like cat and mouse. And you see Batman at certain aspects, or maybe in the last act, Batman becomes a part of the movie and has a smaller role, but a significant role towards the end in helping catch him. But that cat and mouse game between Gordon and Joker is what's the focus of the entire movie. That I could see as an absolutely acceptable way to move forward with it.
Well, what if they did, since we're talking about this, what if they did a movie about Gordon? Like they did everything from his perspective.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was.
it's
I
kinda
mean,
what we're
that-
saying, like,
Yeah.
John, have you read Year One, Frank Miller's Year One?
No, I have not.
I
Looks like
would-
he's
I mean, I've
looks like
seen
he's
bits
a
and
Marvel
pieces.
guy back there. Look at all the
Yeah, I'm kind
prob-
of.
Well, I mean,
I
like,
read The Dark Knight Returns though. Great stuff.
Yeah, Year One. There's actually a pretty solid animated film of it too, with the guy who actually plays Gordon in Gotham, like freaking Ryan from the OC, and he's voicing Batman in it.
Yeah.
And I think there was someone really cool playing Catwoman in it too, or Selena Kyle. I don't, maybe does she? Yeah, she actually does. I'm spoiling it now, but it's a pretty solid story that's very focused on Gordon. It really is a Gordon story, even though it's called Batman Year One. You can see that Nolan grabbed a bit of it for the Batman origin stuff, and particularly his interactions with Gordon in it. But it's really worthwhile. And like I said, if you don't feel like tracking down the book, I'm sure on iTunes or Netflix you can find the Batman Year One animated movie, and it's not very long either. I think it's like 80 minutes, something like that, 70.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check it out. I actually won the Batman Year 2 at a Comic-Con. So so I've actually got Year 2, but I flipped through. I was at a bookstore and I was flipping through Year 1, and I kind of got the gist. I think I've seen stuff on it too, because I recognize like Batman Begins, like you were saying, they like how Nolan took parts. But yeah, I think that would be great, if they kind of did a movie in that direction.
And then even the Killing Joke. I mean, there are elements of the Killing Joke that do, and part of the Killing Joke graphic novel is focused on Jim Gordon and Barbara Gordon. And I think even that, taking a part of that and using it would be really good in playing that cat and mouse. Now Joker has figured out who it is that's hunting him, just like in Seven, and he goes and snatches Barbara Gordon, shoots her, paralyzes her, and boom, now there's a whole new element of madness that Jim Gordon is battling, because his daughter is in the ICU, and maybe you don't have him get kidnapped by the Joker. That's a little bit more of the over the topness of it in the graphic novel, but Gordon is now more determined than ever. He's now kind of falling himself into that lunacy and trying, because he's lost everything. I think that would be a great angle to take with it if they're going to do a sequel. And for me, if they did it like that, I would be like, yeah, this could match or maybe even surpass Joker.
I just had a thought that it would be really crazy if they did the whole Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson Batman trilogy with not touching the Joker, like not even mentioning the Joker at any point, and not any hint, made it a full trilogy that felt like it totally ended with a complete story. And then just the next year, they're like, oh, and by the way, we also made the Killing Joke with Joaquin Phoenix. That's the Joker. And this Batman's got one more thing. Because I think that the thing with Killing Joke in particular is having it end on it not being clear whether or not Batman kills the Joker, and that being the last you ever see from that story it's so critically important to that story that I think it's one of the reasons why they can't ever do a Killing Joke movie in the middle of a series. They would have to do it as like the last.
Yeah, it has to end
the Joker and Batman,
because you got to figure that either Batman ends or the Joker ends. One of them dies.
The laughing stops, and that's it. And like you don't know why the laughing stopped. Did it stop because he just stopped? Did Batman knock him out? Did he kill him? We never know. And that's
that quick cut. Quick cut to the credits. That's what it was. You don't know. We can't. That means there's no answer.
Yeah, the D&D rules mean quick cut means they lived.
All right, let me take a look in the chat a little bit. I think we've probably got a few more minutes in this, maybe before we round it up. Unless you guys are down to roll for the roll. Shoot,
I've got to get to bed at some point relatively soon because I need to go to work tomorrow. but I can hang for a little bit more.
Let's see here. It's going through here. This was a question that Jon Snow put up about Chris Evans as Jordan, to which I say no. I can't even really picture anybody playing Gordon outside of what's his name?
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman, yeah. I mean,
he was so dang good.
It was so good. I mean, it's like that's the only image of Joker. I mean, of Jim Gordon that I get that and the animated series voice. That's it. That's the only thing I can think of. Even J.K. Simmons, I was like, yeah, you look like Gordon, but
as much as people really want him for Lex Luthor, I think Bryan Cranston could kill it as Gordon.
Yeah, I think he could do it. I think he could do it.
Just think of what he looked like in the last season of Breaking Bad. Like he basically was Gordon as far as like visually.
I saw somebody talk about maybe it was you, John. I'm not sure. Talking about
Back Billy D. He was Harvey Dent.
A Lex Luthor movie as the next DC Dark Label or Black Label.
Oh, that might have been Odin. I did want to cover that, and I just haven't gotten the chance. But yeah, that's
with Bryan Cranston as Lex Luthor.
Okay,
yeah,
we're talking.
That people seem to want him really for Lex Luthor, but I think he'd be a fantastic Gordon. But Desert Mav says, "Bring back Billy D." Billy D was Harvey Dent. Lando never got to play Harvey.
Right?
Dent.
Yeah,
he was. He didn't ever get to go to Two-Face though. I think again. I mean. Two-Face is another character that would be great, but at the same time, Aaron Eckhart is the only one I can.
Jeez, oh please, yeah.
And
that movie, Dark Knight, The Dark Knight. I mean, and people have used the analogy. I've heard it before that The Dark Knight is like the Godfather 2 of comic book movies.
Pretty much, yeah.
It hasn't, it's held at such a high esteem. I mean, dude, I saw that movie 5 times in the opening weekend.
It's almost a bit trickier though because. Godfather 2, I think there's a very, very strong argument for 2 being better, but there's also an extremely strong argument for the first one being better, whereas most people seem to accept that Dark Knight is a better movie than Batman Begins. But personally, I kind of think they're like this, and not because Batman Begins is great and Dark Knight is just a little bit better. I think Dark Knight has a lot of problems that Batman Begins does not have, but it does so many things way better that I think ultimately I would still probably say Dark Knight's the best one in that trilogy and Batman Begins is just underneath it. But I think most people agree that Rises is the weakest of the 3.
Rises was a very ambitious one. I mean, but you could tell that Nolan's heart wasn't in it the same way it was in The Dark Knight, just because he wanted the third movie to be the finale between Batman and Joker.
Yeah.
Like, there's no plans to go with Bane, but if you don't have a Joker, then I guess the next best thing could probably be Bane in that point, because Bane was actually part of a huge storyline in Nightfall from the Batman series in the comics. So, I mean, it made sense on paper. It didn't play out the same way. I mean, we got a better Bane than we got in Batman Forever, or Batman and what was it? Batman and Robin?
Batman and Robin. Yeah. He's a plant monster.
Yeah, the fucking that Bane was god awful.
Who would be the Batman Fredo? Jason Todd, I guess.
Harvey Bullock.
Harvey Bullock. Yeah, that's too easy. It's got to be someone who you think is on Batman's side, but then they end up just being kind of an easy traitor.
Todd. Let's see here.
Youth Fredo.
Classic.
Somebody said Nick Nolte would make a good Gordon. Dude, you can't even understand Nick Nolte when he talks.
He's like, pretty old, man.
He's good. Maybe in his younger days, maybe slightly younger, not too much, but
Nick Nolte is a slightly less crazy Gary Busey at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. Definitely.
Gordon Ramsay as Jim Gordon.
He's just yelling at Batman the whole time.
Even Gary Oldman didn't play Gordon with a British accent.
It really is.
I know he's British, but who knows what he really sounds like? That guy just disappears in every role.
Fredo.
What's up, Desert Map? Crisco.
Did anybody see that video with Chris Cuomo when somebody called him Fredo?
He got offended by being called Fredo. So I mean, to be fair, like as an Italian person, you don't want to be called Fredo.
Yeah, no, that's like an insult.
It's an insult. I don't think it's a racial insult. It's calling you the weak link in your family.
You're the fucking idiot. You're the idiot of the family. Fucks everything good up.
Your ambition is far greater than your intelligence. You write checks that your butt can't cash.
I really am on board with that kind of idea, though, with it being a Gordon versus Joker movie.
The marketing on that would be so tricky, though. You'd have to either act like Batman's not going to be in the movie at all and have Batman be a surprise, or find another way to make it very clear that Batman is going to be this like force of nature weaving in and out of the story, and not this is a Batman movie that you're going to see.
Yeah,
it would be a tough one to sell.
Well, when it comes to year one, I mean, are we getting it like with Matt Reeves? Is he going to do like a year one type story with Robert Pattinson?
See, I'm not sure. I know very little about the story he's telling. All I've really heard is that apparently Riddler is going to be the villain, and that could mean anything.
Well,
really.
no, they I believe that it's going to be slightly inspired by The Long Halloween. I think.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's going to be a seasonal. It's going to be a movie. The storyline of the movie itself will push from around. It'll be around an 8-month span. So it's going to be an actual it's going to be a rogues gallery. You'll see a little bit of each one of Batman's enemies in it, but main focus will be Riddler and Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So I mean,
the Two-Face stuff in Dark Knight, I think, is pretty heavily pulled from Long Halloween, or at least the Harvey Dent stuff.
Yeah, the Harvey Dent stuff minus the acid. They replaced the acid with the gas with the oil drums. The Joker wasn't really a big factor in that story either. So
I don't think he was in it at all. At least I don't remember. I have both Long Halloween and Dark Victory, which is like the sequel to Long Halloween, in my basement somewhere. So.
No, I
might track those down before our next talk about Batman.
About a month ago, I think it was. I read it.
Oh, okay.
And Joker has a part. It's short, not much. Poison Ivy. I mean, it's a rogues gallery. It's almost all of his villains. Almost all of them are in it. But it also takes place over the course of a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think.
Oh snap!
Did we just lose Uche? Does that mean the stream's down?
Yeah. No. Or let me see. No, we're still up. It looks like. Yeah, he'll.
Sorry,
there's that.
This fucking mouse. God damn it!
Did you just say your mouse and it left? That's pretty.
Well, yeah. For a second, Mark and me are like, are we still live or what
happened? We're on his
no,
channel.
dude. It's the freaking this mouse. I've been contemplating replacing it for like the last week. Because every time I reach to grab it, I hit the little, where your thumb goes on a mouse? Why would you put buttons on that side of the mouse?
Yeah.
Like right where your thumb touches.
Corsair makes great mouse.
I mean, I'm using a Razer. I mean,
Corsair is better than Razer. Trust the gaming guy from Geeks and Gamers.
Republican
I actually
Gamers.
just won a first-person shooter competition against a friend who plays the game a lot. Shit. And I've never played multiplayer in it before, and I beat him in a best 2 out of 3.
And what game was that?
Dusk World. So Dusk World multiplayer. There's actually a review of the single player portion on my channel. And I think actually prior to the Sekiro video I released last week, I think my Dusk review is the best video I've made. Mostly because the soundtrack's amazing. And the guy who wrote the soundtrack replies to every tweet I make about it. I think he really likes it when people talk about his music.
He's like, yeah, plug me more.
He always likes it, and he's like, yeah, no, you can also get the thing on my Bandcamp here. And I was like, yes, buy his soundtrack because it's awesome. It's like 9 Inch Nails level, amazing industrial music.
I think this is an interesting question. Why haven't we got Hugo Strange as a main villain yet in the movie? Hugo Strange is a lesser known villain of Batman's, but he is a formidable villain of Batman.
He was a deep pull when they brought him out for Arkham City, and it worked out really well. But that wasn't like, oh yeah, Hugo Strange. This is one of the big ones. That was like, Hugo Strange, really?
Yeah.
And then people thought about it, and it's like, I'm sweaty. I don't think I'm sweating. I'm Italian. I have a sheen.
All right. Any more questions in here? Anything else anybody want to touch on with the movie? Any other aspects of it you guys want to dive into before we end this up?
I just realized what they meant by sweaty. It was a gamer thing. It's because I said I won.
He's like, sweaty, you sons of...
No, I was like, really? Because I have my lights and they are kind of hot, and I wear a toque because my hair looks like crap when I have my headset on. But,
yeah.
I thought I might be sweating, but then I was like, oh no, I'm dry as a bone. What the hell? But sweaty is a term used when people are really good at a shooter. They say, "Oh, the sweats are out."
Yeah, I just say you're pretty damn good. Pretty good.
Now I'm gonna get people challenging me too. I am Mark the Cyborg on Steam, so I guess if you guys want to flood me with friend requests, so if I have any time between editing and writing videos.
What games do you play on Steam?
I mean, now actually I'm not playing any game on Steam currently because I'm bouncing between Knights of the Old Republic for like Ryan and I are doing kind of a long-term Darth Revan thing that we'll hopefully get out for Christmas. I'll do a Knights of the Old Republic review and he's going to do a Darth Revan lore video.
Yeah.
Bounty Hunter that I'm hoping to have out for around when Mandalorian comes out.
Yep.
And the game that I've been doing my streams on, which is called Blasphemous. It's like a Castlevania type game. And both Knights of the Old Republic and Blasphemous I'm playing on GOG, which is CD Projekt's storefront. The guys who make Cyberpunk and Witcher.
Yeah. Oh, God, I can't wait for Cyberpunk.
It's the Steam competitor that you should support because they're actually good.
Which one is it? It's
Good Old Games, GOG.
Good Old Games.
Yeah, and the benefit to buying games there is that they have no digital rights management, meaning that you own those games forever. You never have to like handshake with the server to verify your purchases. It's just if you bought a game off GOG, you download it, you can copy it to a USB key, burn it to a disk, copy it to 500 USB keys, do whatever you want with it. It's just yours, and I think that's a very consumer-friendly feature.
Shoot, I just actually played Shenmue 3.
Oh, really? How was it?
Dude, I am a massive Shenmue fan. People may not know that, but if you look behind me here.
Yeah, see the Dreamcast, yeah.
There's a Dreamcast. There's a Dreamcast. Shenmue 3, I mean, it's, you know, I backed the game, so they got me the backer trial out, and I thought it was pretty amazing. I thought it was like, I felt like I fell right back into the Shenmue world. So,
have you ever played any of the Yakuza games?
Yeah, I played all of them.
Oh, okay, cool. Every time I hear people talk about Shenmue, I was like, try Yakuza because Yakuza is awesome, and they still actively make. Yeah,
Yakuza is a beast. I actually bought, you know, Yakuza 6 just came out in the States like maybe 6-8 months ago. Or a year ago?
Yeah, the PS4 version. I've been waiting to play all the Yakuza games as they come to Steam.
I'm on
Kiwami
Yakuza 6 in Japan at the end of 2017.
Now I feel stupid for asking you if you've heard of it.
I was in Japan, and
you're way deeper than I am.
Yeah, I got.
And John's just like, what are you weebs talking about?
No, you guys are good. You guys are good.
I got the Japanese version, no English in it. And, you know, when I put it in my PS4, it plays it. So I was like,
yeah, PS4 is
no English. There's no subtitles. I had my phone out with the Google Translate, put it up against my screen. Like, what are they saying? Like,
what's this game about? I don't know. Kiryu is a badass though. But I've noticed in both of your backgrounds, there's things from my youth. I saw the Dreamcast behind Uche, and behind you it was Spider-Man and Venom, the final confrontation, and then the next month, the first issue of Lethal Protector. I had both of those. I have no idea where they are. They might be in my house somewhere, or might be at my parents' house. But
you're talking about the Venom issue that's above.
Yeah, the one where it's Venom and Spider-Man, just to the left of that.
Venom. That was the first Venom comic I ever had. Was the one?
Yeah, it was the first one. I don't think he ever had his own comic before that. But I remember, it doesn't really come through on the camera. But that Spider-Man book to the left of it is very shiny gold cover, and I remember it being, when I first saw it at the drugstore, it was like, oh, I've got to get this, and I like begged my mom for it.
Oh,
and
dude, I see that.
Mine was torn apart on the playground at elementary school, and I think my copy, if I do ever find it, it's like held together by staples, so it's probably worth nothing at all. But I did love
those
that.
Original Jim Lee covers behind you. Yeah, I had those.
Oh, yeah.
X-Men was my favorite Marvel comic book of all of them. Like, I like Spider-Man more, his animated cartoon from the 90s than the comics, but I had all the X-Men comics. I was a disciple of the animated series. I think
everybody,
Yeah,
I think on the animated X-Men series, Rogue was probably where I first realized I was straight. I was like, yeah. She's I was like 9, just like, man, why am I so interested in that one?
I had that Jean Grey envy. I was like, fuck you, Cyclops. Wolverine, come on, Wolverine, get her down.
Yeah, it was like back in the 90s, it was well, especially I think all like those cartoons like X-Men, like I feel like that cartoon was like responsible for even, getting a lot of kids into comics in the first place.
Yeah, it was, dude.
Yeah.
Like
it was pretty good.
Like the 90s, man, the 90s was just the best, dude. The best of everything happened in the 90s. The best.
In a way, that was kind of like the first Marvel Cinematic Universe too, because I still remember the first time that like the animated series Spider-Man crossed over to X-Men, and he just ended up at the X-Mansion, and then the like animated series X-Men were like on Spider-Man, and they would do like crossovers and things, and I was like, oh man, it's crazy.
I mean,
you're right. Spider-Man is sort of a mutant, isn't he?
It was just really like, it was a lot truer to the comics. Like the 90s shows, they weren't the same as the comics, but they had, visually they were the same. The way that the way the characters looked, their outfits, everything like that. But the stories, like X-Men and Batman the Animated Series, the stories were more mature as the shows went on. Like you started to get stories that dealt more with things that were more kind of adjacent to what was happening in society. Like racism was a big factor in the X-Men show because the mutants were treated as, second-class citizens. And then, you had Batman the Animated Series dealt with child abuse. It dealt with, with serial like murders, even though they didn't show murders. I mean, it dealt with subject matter that was really more PG-13 than PG based on the time slot that they had these shows coming on. I mean, Batman the Animated Series, they drew the actual show itself on a black canvas.
Yeah.
Wow.
Black canvas.
Yeah, the animation that was so incredible.
It was amazing. Even the theme, everything about like every episode was pretty solid.
Yeah.
From the Batman animated series. Like there was not one episode where you came away and you're like, yeah, that kind of sucked. Like, they were all on point. Like at least as a kid, I remember now.
Yeah, and X-Men was the same way.
A good chunk of them fairly recently, like within the last 5 years or so, like probably around the time Nolan's series was wrapping up, and they hold up quite well. I just want to answer one question in the chat here because Grobnob the Troll said, if he let the midget live, why would he kill the? If you let the midget live, why would he kill Whack the Q chick? There he goes. I think if she rejects him, like if she actually says like, no, like I don't have any feelings for you at all. I want you out of my house. Get out of here, and makes him feel abandoned in a way that the little person did not. Like he was just kind of like please don't kill me, Arthur, and like was always kind of nice to him. So I think there's a pretty good reason why he would have he wouldn't be justified killing her. I want to make that clear. But he would have motive to kill her, whereas it would make sense that he'd show mercy to the little guy.
Yeah, for sure. And just thinking back on that scene, she made sure not to offend him. She made sure not to offend him.
Yeah,
and
she
how
was
she
trying.
responded. She was like, you're the guy from down the street, right? Or down the hall, right? I think you're in the wrong apartment. I was like, yeah, don't talk shit. Don't talk shit. Because he's on the edge right now. He's going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
Dude.
As scared as you are right now, you're not scared enough.
Anything you want to plug there, John, before we end it up? Because I'm feeling like we're about to wrap it up here.
Yeah, I would say definitely subscribe to Uche and subscribe to Mark. I just I'm pretty sure I just subscribed to Mark, although I couldn't. I was like, did I just hit the subscribe button or was I subscribed?
Definitely
I've seen you around.
Twitter, and I followed you back.
Yeah, so yeah, just subscribe to these guys. Subscribe to their channel and just help them crack that watch time and get them monetized. So, Uche, it's been a pleasure. Being on your channel, Mark. It's been fun. You guys know your stuff. That's why it's a lot of fun. So,
yeah, for sure, man. And likewise to you. It's an honor. Like I told Jeremy, like I told Mauler, Mark even knows as well. I've been watching you guys' channels for like a year before I started my YouTube channel. I just, I learned. I didn't, I wasn't commenting on stuff.
That's how I am.
Videos. I was just lurking around the corner, like, hey, that's a cool video. Okay, I'm gone. But love your content, man. Love the way you present it. I love the fucking theme song at the beginning. And sometimes it goes longer than other times. So I'm like, oh.
Yeah, everybody's loved it. Yeah, so that's why I'm not changing it anytime soon until people finally get sick of it and they're like, change that damn thing already.
No, it's great. Yeah. I love it. And I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you coming on to the channel. Definitely an honor for me as well to have you on. Mark, same to you, brother. Like, you guys have really embraced me now that I'm new, as the new guy coming into YouTube. And I really appreciate it. And, just really, we had a good talk. I really enjoyed it. I really feel like it was, we were able to really kind of touch base on everything as far as the movie went. And I do want to plug my Fandom Menace Origins video is almost done.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I saw that, man. I saw that on Twitter.
It is almost done, and it is fucking fire. I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm literally.
You want to give a description of it for the the chat?
So for the chat, this video this video essay that I'm working on is called Fandom Menace Origins, and basically, what I'm doing in this video is I'm kind of presenting it in a chapter-based kind of narrative about the beginnings of Star Wars, as far as the fans have seen it, and kind of follows the origins of the Phantom Menace after the Phantom Menace was released, after the prequels, and then it goes from a slight overview of the original trilogy to a overview of the prequels and how the fans responded to the prequels. And in the final chapter of it, it goes from the buying of Lucasfilm by Disney into The Last Jedi, a lot of the controversy that surrounded The Last Jedi from the fans' perspective. And I have a lot of video clips that were given to me, and a lot of news quotes and stuff that were given to me by Stephen Walton, who's actually working on the Phantom Menace book. And now I'm compiling those into the last part, because really the meat and the real message of the video is just the Phantom Menace was born because of the disrespect that was shown to the fans of Star Wars, the people who've dedicated decades of their lives to supporting. They were turned on by the higher ups at Disney. They turned their backs on the fans, and this is where the fans have now voiced their displeasure and have now begun to affect Star Wars directly because of that displeasure. And to a certain extent, the Star Wars brand is now broken and may not ever recover because of the disrespect that was shown to the scores of fans around the world. So I've done it in a neat way. I've got a lot of cut-ups from all of the movies. I got cut-ups from every single movie, multiple cut-ups to go with each part of the video. It's really, right now I'm at the back end of it, and it's hovering around 15 minutes, around 15, 17 minutes. So it's going to have some substance to it. And it's going to, try and be as respectful to the truth of what the executives did, not only to the fans, but also, as we have just recently found out, what they did to George Lucas. And it's going to dive into, just why the Phantom Menace is here to stay. Because, movie studios used to be able to dictate what they were going to show to fans, but now that's no longer the case. And the Phantom Menace is a big reason for that. So
awesome, man! I can't wait.
Yeah.
When you posted that trailer on Twitter, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good.
It's gonna be
you
good.
posted the preview scene at the end of our rewrite of episode 7 stream, and it was just after that like George Lucas news broke. So oh man, that clip that you opened the video with of Kathleen Kennedy talking to George, I'm just like, it made me want to cry. I was like, oh no.
Dude. You know, and it's because I mean, think about it. A lot of us all felt really sad about reading that news, dude. I felt sad for George Lucas. These people took your baby and they massacred it for money, and they're not even getting that money.
It felt so much better for us thinking there was a chance that George had just totally tapped out, and he was like, "Yeah, you know what, Star Wars, like I've said everything I need to say with Star Wars. I can't do anything with it. People want more from it. I've really got nothing left in the tank. I've got some ideas. I told them they'll do whatever they want with it, but I really don't care." No, it's pretty clear that he gave things that he still wanted to do with it and just didn't trust himself to be at the wheel, wanted to give someone else the wheel. And they're like, no, don't worry. We got this, but get out of the car.
Then they steal your car. Yeah, they just totally steal it. They're like, well, you can sit in the back seat and kind of tell us, you know, where you think it should go. And he gets out of the car and they just freaking drive off.
Yeah.
Leave him there.
We're not going to Mexico. We're going to Canada.
Yeah.
It was sad, dude. And you know, and I've always, and you know, I feel like I could kind of read what it was with Lucas. He was burnt out after the prequels. He was burnt out. If Disney never came to him with, you know, purchasing you know, Lucasfilm, he may have waited 10, maybe 12 more years before he went back to it, but he was burnt out. You know, the prequels weren't received the way that he wanted them to be received, partially because of his own, you know, his own crafting of how he put together the movies. But you know, I feel like the prequels have actually been more widely accepted over time because time allowed people to kind of revisit it a few times, revisit the movies, revisit the lore that was built up from the movies. And now the prequels have a much better light shined on them than they were back in, you know, 2000, 2001, 2002. So, you know, they have aged well with time, even though that we accept the flaws within the prequel trilogy. Mm-hmm. But what they did with this sequel trilogy has been goddamn disgraceful. I mean, at the very least, you can look at The Force Awakens and say, okay, we'll take it. But when The Last Jedi, The Last Jedi, I mean, you ruined the brand. You can't even make a movie to follow that up. It's not even really possible.
I think the way I always look at it is
about what happens in Rise of Skywalker. I don't care.
Yeah, I think at least all the Phantom Menace sect of the community is kind of going and being like, "How about let's see this train wreck? It might be impressive to watch."
How much can they salvage? But I know that there is no way that the sequel trilogy will be looked at in 10 years, in 20 years, with the kind of fondness, with the acceptable fondness you have for the prequel trilogy and
I think
the original trilogy. There's
the
no
way I've always come to describe the prequels now, looking back on them especially, is they were a sturdy skeleton that had some rough looking skin and maybe a bit too much weight around the midsection, and definitely some flaws and some things that were bad about it, but good sturdy bones and good sturdy spine.
It was a little childish with Phantom Menace.
Whereas the sequels,
but it was saved by the Darth Maul fights. It was saved by that.
Well, and the core story that was being told there, I think, was solid. Whereas the sequels, it's like beautiful skin and epically chiseled muscles on top of just a distorted skeleton that's like this,
and no brain inside.
You can see
no brain, no heart.
A person with a bit of acne and a bit of extra weight, and be like, they're still a really attractive person. But if you see a person with perfect skin and big muscles, but their bone structure is totally messed up and they look like a freak, they're scary to look at.
I could not. I mean, you know, and to George Lucas's credit, Revenge of the Sith was, aside from some of the dry lines in it, it was a great movie. Revenge of the Sith was great. I put that almost in the same place that I would put Return of the Jedi. Maybe a little bit behind Return of the Jedi, maybe a little bit in front of it. Not totally sure. A New Hope is in front of that, and Empire Strikes Back is the best film that they had. Mm-hmm. But dude, the sequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy is the reason why Star Wars will not make it to the third generation of kids.
Yep, exactly.
Disney, I'm like, well, the third act of Rogue One was all right.
Rogue One was actually a decent movie. It wasn't bad, but that was totally not.
Characters are a little light in Rogue One, though, when you really think. Like K2SO was the death that hits you the hardest, and he's the droid.
Yeah. I know. That was what most impressive about that movie is like, wow, you actually made me care about the droid.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, dang.
About the droid. And I kind of cared about Jyn Erso at the end when they sacrificed themselves.
Yeah, no, that was it had its moments.
Gave them a little bit more weight to me. And then you had the greatest Vader scene in all of the Vader all of the movie.
Yeah.
I just think that Rogue One was a movie with 7 main characters when it could have done a lot better with 3, like or even like 4 max. I think they were trying to have too many people be integral parts of the plan that I just don't think they had enough time to really develop them well enough. That was my biggest problem with Rogue One even at release. It's why I originally was like, Rogue One's good, but I don't know if it's as good as Force Awakens. But then all of the mystery that I found really interesting in Force Awakens was like, oh, the answer to everything is nothing. Awesome.
Right.
Nothing and nowhere and good luck.
And you for thinking that was important.
We don't even, there's no GPS. They ain't get no signal where they're at now. They're just lost. It's unbelievable. But so I'm looking forward to getting that video out. I'm literally about to jump off this stream and attempt to get it finished. Every time I jump on it, I'm on it for about 3 or 4 hours because I want to take my time with it. I don't want to rush it out. I want to make sure I get it done right, make sure it all flows well, and then hopefully we got to find out, make sure that it gets through without getting flagged by YouTube like the last one did.
The Chappelle video was great though. So everyone then, if you go through Uche's live streams, throw them on when you're sleeping to up his watch hours.
Yeah, just turn it on.
Only if you have unlimited internet though. If it's going to put you over your data, don't do that.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys very much for being on the stream. I appreciate everybody in the chat. We will be back on sometime in next little bit, maybe a week or so. But definitely, guys, again, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody, and we will catch you guys on the next video. Peace.
Later, everybody.
All right.